Volcha!
And welcome to our studio series.
This is the second in our quarantine series.
And this one we're calling Birdie in the Egg.
So, Birdie is our new electric kettle. And we like Birdie, don't we?
We do. We very much so like Birdie. Birdie in the Egg is the very first still life on our studio series. So, Dad, tell us something about still life.
Well, still life is, some people like painting still life, and honestly, some people don't. It's quite a change for people who are used to painting from photographs to paint from real life. It is a skill that's worth acquiring. It really does build up your powers of observation.
Painting, after all, really is the practice of looking really, really hard at things. So I can see you're using orange to sketch in some of the objects with a small brush. Do you want to tell me how we sort of landed on this composition?
Yeah, so still life is really, there's a bit of a conceit to still life. You're supposed to kind of just, it's supposed to look like you just came across these objects randomly. But in fact, in still life, you've got more control over your subject matter than you have in pretty much any other genre, which means you need to spend more time probably in organizing your subject matter than you would in most other scenarios. Like you can't move around buildings to suit your street scene.
Right.
But with still life, there's a lot of things you can move around.
Perhaps too many things to move around.
We moved a lot of things around. In the end, we came up with this very simple composition, partly because it's a demo, and we do need to get through it in a reasonable amount of time. But also, I prefer this. A lot of my still lifes are very simple like this, and so it's much purer like this.
And it's a conversation between like two objects. It's like a duet.
Exactly, a duet between the cool blue of Birdie and the warm golden color of the grapefruit.
So I can see you're starting to sort of block in some colors here. You're using an orange color to create a base layer in the underpainting for Birdie. We know that Birdie is going to end up being a blue color, so do you want to talk about why you're going in with this orange?
Yeah, we've covered this a few times in our underpainting classes, but the general idea is where the light is going to fall on the kettle, even though it's blue, we want this golden color to be underneath to show through, just basically to warm it up.
Yeah, we talk a lot about the importance of contrasting temperatures in your underpainting versus your overpainting. Here we have a nice mix of complementary colors. So orange is going to be the base, and you're going to put blue, which is a complementary color, on top.
And it really spices it up.
So some of you might be wondering, no, those are not feathers that he's adding in. Dad, you want to tell us a little bit about this dark background you're starting to plug in?
Yeah, so it's dark. It's not black. It's a purplish color. I think it's alizarin crimson mixed with some ultramarine blue. Dark backgrounds help to create some luminosity in a painting. People talk about a painting having light in it. The thing to remember is you can't achieve that light simply by adding white. Adding more toothpaste to the painting is not going to make it brighter. So you need that dark background to really create that sense of internal light in the painting.
It makes it pop.
And it makes it pop.
So I can see that the background color is starting to change a little bit.
Yeah, so it's always a good idea when you've got a fairly large area to modulate the color of the background. It can help, well, first of all, it breaks the monotony. It also helps to create a sense of light passing across the painting. It also comes back to an earlier point we talked about with the complementaries, the blue and the orange. So when we start adding in some brown here, and what we're really doing is bringing in a muted orange, because that brown is really orange, and so it is essentially another variant of the complementary of the blue. So that's really going to, again, help that blue pop a bit more.
I see. So the brown is kind of talking to the warmer tones of the orange. So Dad, I see you're starting to lay down some of your sort of more major lights and darks, creating some forms, some shading. What's your plan for Birdie?
So I think I'm second guessing a little bit here. I had laid in a lot of orange, but now I'm thinking that probably a little more of that kettle is going to be in a mid-tone. So I'm thinking I'm going to pull that blue over to the right a bit more and just leave the orange for where it's really in highlight. Yeah, so I need to get darker with this grapefruit. This happens quite a bit, so I try to get it right first time, but invariably it takes me several tries to get it down to the depth of color that I really need for my underpainting.
It's hard to convince people to go dark enough with their underpaintings. You must go darker than you think you need to go.
Go dark or go home.
Basically. And going even darker yet again, sort of creating a ground here for Birdie and her egg to sit on.
Yeah, and it's interesting. This is a shiny surface, so people sometimes will think a shiny surface is bright, but in fact you need that real deep darkness to be able to show those reflections in it.
Think of a lake at night with the full moon hitting.
Don't think of it.
So, Dad, where'd you get that nice new fancy brush, eh?
Hey, I'll have you know, this cost me $3.50 in Home Depot 5 years ago. I love it.
Whatever works for you. Okay, so it looks like you're going in and making quite an adjustment to your background.
Yeah, that background was way too cold, so we had to warm it up quite a bit in order to create the contrast with the kettle. What is it you like to say?
I always say that painting is a series of mistakes that is corrected beautifully.
There you go.
So we're getting into some text here. Dad, talk to us a little bit about text. It is notorious in painting as a problem.
It does give people a problem because they often have difficulty integrating it into the painting. It often looks like it's something stuck on top. Right now we're just blocking it in so we know where the letters are. Later on in the overpainting, we'll show you how to integrate that into the object itself.
So you're getting into the overpainting phase. You're using oils here. You can, of course, continue with your acrylics as long as your underpainting is dry.
Yeah, the difference with using oils is they give you a little bit more drying time so that you've got more time to work the paint. But in this particular case, you could just as easily continue with acrylics because it wouldn't have really made much difference.
So you're really going in here with your brightest bright, it looks like.
Almost, yeah. I do this often. I mean, there's no rules that you have to follow all the time, but it's often a good idea to go in with a really bright color after your underpainting, just to force you into the top of the range. So now you know that every other color is going to be bracketed within that range.
So all the other colors will be less bright than this color.
Other than just a few little highlights.
Got it.
So this may be a little difficult to see on screen, but the color I'm laying down here is ever so slightly darker than the color that would have been laid on previously.
Speaking of which, we actually haven't discussed the blue color yet.
Oh yeah, this is a phthalo blue. Now you may not be sure whether you've got this in your color palette, but it's a fairly common color. It's one of the newer colors, one of the less expensive colors, and it goes by various names. Sometimes it's called Winsor blue, permanent blue, or in fact if you've got any blue that has the word hue in it, H-U-E, then it probably is in fact a phthalo blue. It's quite a cold color. I don't use it very often in landscapes and stuff, but it's perfect for this because it really is good for that icy blue color that we're trying to get here.
There are other blues as well that are very common in an artist kit. Cobalt being perhaps the most expensive and revered of the blues. And then one of the other common ones as well is ultramarine blue.
We talk a lot more about our pigments in a special series that we've done on YouTube on pigments, so check that out. There'll be a link below for that.
If you're curious about blue, definitely check out that video. So the darker blue that you're adding into the left side of the kettle is slightly more muted, looks like.
Yeah, this is achieved by just adding a little bit of orange, so adding the complementary to a color will give you a grayed out version of that color.
I see. And just to clarify, what is happening here?
Finger painting.
Would you lose your brush?
Using finger to smudge an area or to soften an edge now and again is perfectly fine. Just don't overdo it.
So you're really bouncing that reflection of the grapefruit off of the kettle there on the left.
Yeah, part of planning for your still life arrangement is, if you've got a reflective surface, to put something like this in front so that you have the opportunity to demonstrate those reflections. It really adds a dimension.
So not only are you sort of arranging objects, but you're trying to arrange reflections. Ooh, we got a really nice high key eye highlight happening here.
Yeah, the trick here is not to overdo it, right? You really want to restrict those super highlights to a small percentage of your canvas. If you overdo it, it starts to look like it's snowing.
They usually happen at the very end of a painting.
Yeah, and just less is more.
So also getting some dimension or forming happening onto these letters.
Yes, this is what we discussed earlier about making these letters feel like they're part of the object as opposed to something that's stuck on top. So going with some of the light now on the grapefruit, just again, as we mentioned earlier, make sure you go bright enough. This orange has a lot of yellow and a lot of white in it.
And it also looks like you're using a different technique to apply the paint. It's scratchier or something.
Yeah, we're scrubbing it on a little bit lightly so that some of that underpainting is showing through and creating a little bit of texture for us.
So looks like the shadow you're adding on the grapefruit is just straight up green.
Yeah, it can be difficult sometimes to discern the color in a shadow, and one good clue is to look at the light. If the light is warm, the chances are the shadow will be cool. If the light is cool, then the chances are you're looking at a warm shadow.
Got it. So it looks like the reflections here are noticeably warmer than the grapefruit itself.
Yeah, they're probably just picking up some of the color of the polished wood that the objects are sitting on. But honestly, that's not what I'm thinking as I'm painting this. I'm just looking, and it's coming out this way because it's what I'm looking at.
So you're trying to paint what you see. You're not trying to sort of intellectualize the reflection of the grapefruit. You're just trying to find the color that you're seeing.
And if you do that, these things will come out.
Okay, cool. We'd like to take a moment to thank Sunkissed, our sponsors, for the making of this video.
Honestly, this label, I thought it was a cute little thing, but I'm quite regretting it now. We probably should have been better if we just left it out.
Well, you know what? You've got a label on the kettle, so you might as well slap a label on the grapefruit,
too. This is a branded painting.
So you're getting in some of the pitted sort of surface texture of the grapefruit here.
Yeah, just a hint. Just a hint is enough. I don't think you need to go overboard. A little goes a long way.
You're just sort of suggesting the texture.
Indeed.
So not unlike the grapefruit, the reflection of the kettle is a bit darker than the kettle itself.
Mm-hmm. And it happens to be a nice opportunity to introduce a richer, warmer version of the blue that's up above.
So you're just waiting for an opportunity to bring that out.
Take it when you get it.
So you're picking out a few sort of smaller, crispier highlights here.
Yeah, again, less is more. Leave a little bit for the imagination. Don't over-explain things is generally a good philosophy.
So just little notes of light there. Oh, so you're making this adjustment again. You did this already in the underpainting.
It is a bit of deja vu, isn't it? So the thing is, when you're doing a painting, you need to have a plan. You absolutely do have to have a plan, but you also have to be flexible and ready to make a change. In this case, it felt like this painting needed a little bit of lighting coming in from the top.
And just more dimension.
It just does add a little bit of extra dimension.
I agree. And that's a wrap.
Indeed. Thank you for joining us in this, the second of our quarantine series. Watch for more to come.
If you followed along and painted your own version of our still life, we would love to see it. We try to provide feedback when possible, so feel free to post on Instagram and tag us or DM us at Our Studio Series. We thank you for joining us again. Until next time.